In 198 AD, outside the walls of Hatra, a Roman soldier could look up and expect the usual things: a stone, an arrow, a jar of fire. Then a clay pot shattered near his feet, and the ground began to move, not with smoke, not with flame, with scorpions. Hatra was a desert fortress near modern Mosul. But to Emperor Septimius Severus, it became the kind of problem Rome hated most: a city too small to ignore, and too hard to break. The Romans had siege engines, discipline, and the confidence of an empire. The defenders had walls, desert heat, and something colder. They understood that a soldier does not always need to be killed to become useless. Sometimes he only needs to panic. Ancient sieges were machines built against other machines. Attackers brought towers, ladders, battering rams, and miners who dug under walls to make them collapse. Defenders answered with stones, arrows, fire, and boiling liquids. But sometimes, those weapons were not enough. A stone could miss. An arrow could be blocked. Fire could be avoided. A living weapon did not stop when it landed. That was the difference. A beehive thrown from a wall did not need perfect aim. Once it broke, the bees chose their own targets. A jar filled with snakes did not need a commander. Once it hit a deck, tower, or narrow passage, the enemy had to fight the animal. The pain and the fear at the same time. And in a siege, fear was not a small thing. It could break the rhythm of the entire assault. Long before modern armies used the language of biological warfare, ancient defenders were already turning nature into a weapon. Not with laboratories, not with engineered disease, but with venom, swarms, poison, and animals that made discipline collapse faster than armor could protect it. One of the clearest examples came at Themyscira. Themyscira was a city in Pontus, near the southern coast of the Black Sea, by the Thermodon River. In the 1st century BC, Roman forces under Lucullus besieged it during the wars against Mithridates, the king who challenged Rome in Asia Minor. The Romans did what Romans did best. They built, they measured, they dug. Their tunnels under Themyscira became so large that men could fight underground inside them. That mattered because tunneling was one of the most dangerous ways to attack a city. If miners reached the foundation, the wall could collapse from below. So the people inside Themyscira cut holes down into the tunnels. Then they sent in bees and wild animals, even bears, according to the ancient writer Appian. Imagine being a Roman worker, underground. You are not in an open field. You cannot spread out. You cannot see clearly. Then the tunnel fills with buzzing, claws, bodies, and panic. That was not random cruelty. It was a perfect answer to the tunnel itself. The weapon matched the space. Above ground, bees were a problem. Underground, they were chaos. A bear in the wild was dangerous. A bear in a tunnel was a moving wall of terror. The defenders only had to make Roman engineering too costly to continue. At Hatra, the logic was even harsher. Severus came with imperial power behind him. Hatra answered with walls, fire, distance, and the desert. Cassius Dio records that the Roman siege engines were burned. Many soldiers were killed, and many more were wounded. Later tradition remembered the defense with clay pots packed with scorpions and biting insects, dropped or thrown into Roman positions. Maybe every detail did not survive perfectly, but the fear behind it did. A Roman legionary could train for swords. He could lock shields against arrows. He could march while stones crashed around him. But how do you hold formation against a swarm under your armor? How do you keep pushing a siege tower when men start tearing at their own clothes? How do you obey orders when the enemy has turned the ground itself into something hostile? That was the genius of these weapons. They attacked the body, but they aimed at the mind. Snakes worked the same way. Hannibal, the Carthaginian general. is said to have used pots filled with venomous snakes in a naval battle against the fleet of King Eumenes of Pergamon. Not because snakes were stronger than ships. They were not. But because a ship deck was a trapped surface. Once panic began there, it had nowhere to go. This is why ancient defenders threw beehives, snakes, and scorpions over walls. Not because they were desperate savages, because they understood war too well. A siege was supposed to turn a city into a prison. These weapons reversed that feeling. Suddenly, the attackers were the ones trapped under the wall, inside the tunnel, on the ladder, on the deck, inside armor that now felt like a cage. And that is what made the tactic so frightening. It did not replace stones, arrows, or fire. It made every one of them worse, because once fear entered the formation, the wall did not need to fall. The army did.